All right, so again, we just have a short little practice where we're going to work with some operation of functions. So yesterday we talked about what a function is. Today we're going to do some operations with those functions. Real quick, when you see something like this, f plus g of x, you're just going to take f of x, add it to g of x. The only tricky one is subtraction. We're still going to subtract the two, but I want you to make a note, must distribute the negative sign. And I'll show you an example of that in a moment. And then multiplication, you're just going to take f of x, multiply it by g of x. Kind of remember to distribute if necessary. And then we can also divide. So we can do operations within functions. So let's take a look at some specific examples. So here I have f of x is 2x minus 4. G of x is 2x squared minus 3. I'll notice it's plus, so I'm going to take f of x, add it to g of x. And from here, I'm just going to combine like terms. So I have 2x squared plus 2x minus 7, final answer. We'll save the hardest one for last, so we'll go multiplication next. So here I have 2x minus 4, and then 2x squared minus 3. So again, here I need to know that I'm multiplying these, and they have multiple terms, so I'm going to need to remember to distribute. I get 4x cubed minus 6x, negative 8x squared, and then finally positive 12. All right, and then I just need to write in standard form. So I'm going to have my exponents listed in descending order. Division, I'm going to take f of x, divide it by g of x, excuse me. Okay, and then I just need to look to see if I can simplify. Well, up top, I can take out a 2. Down below, can't really do anything. And there's my final answer. Now, like I said, the one thing we have to pay attention to is subtraction. So I have 2x minus 4 minus, but then I've got to kind of think about this in parentheses. So I've got to distribute that negative. So I have negative 2x squared plus 3. When I combine the negative 4 and the 3 to get negative 1. So again, this is the tricky one. Then we can also have what's called a composition of a function. And this is where we are taking one function and plugging it in for the other. It can be written one of two ways. You can see this little open circle. This is read f of g of x. So what I'm simply doing, or I can rewrite it f parenthesis g of x with double parentheses. I'm taking the g of x function and plugging it into function f. So again, for this one, f of g of x, I can rewrite it as this. What I'm doing is I'm taking this g of x and plugging it into x in that first function. So instead of x squared, it'll actually be x minus 2 squared minus 1. Do not distribute. Remember, you got to write this out. When you FOIL this, you get x squared minus 4x plus 4 minus 1. So I'm left with x squared minus 4x plus 3. Same thing on the right side. Notice it's the same functions, but take a look at the letters that are written backwards. If you want to, again, I'm taking f of x and I'm plugging it into x in my other function called g of x. All right, so it'll instead of x minus 2, I'm going to take that x and replace it with my first function, which is x squared minus 1, then minus 2. Minus 3 would be my final answer. This can also be completed with variables as well as simply numbers. So you'll notice the operations I just cut and paste, they're the exact same, all right? My functions have not changed. All I'm doing now is instead of working with variables, I'm working with numbers. So again, I can write this as f of g of 2. Easiest thing I think to do is evaluate g of 2 first. So in this function, g of x, everywhere I see an x, I'm going to replace it with 2. So g of 2 equals 2 minus 2, which is 0. So now I'm going to take this 0 and plug it in for x in my other function f. So everywhere I see an x and f of x, I'm going to replace it with a 0, and I get that this is equal to -1. On the right side, again, same functions. I'm now doing the opposite. I'm taking -1, plugging it into function f first. I'll take that answer and plug that in for g. So if I were to rewrite this, it would look like this. And again, what I'm going to do first is I'm going to evaluate this. So I'm going to take -1 and plug it in for f. So I'm left with -1 squared minus 1. That gives me 1 minus 1, which is 0. And then I'm going to take that 0 and plug it in for x in my other function. So I have g of 0 now. It's equal to 0 minus 2. So I get that this is -2. So g of f of -1 equals -2.